So Poltergeist is a film that I didn't give much of a flip about for the longest time. Apparently you can't swear on YouTube for the first like 15 to 20 seconds of your video, otherwise they'll penalize you. Why just then and not any other time? I don't know, but we'll just play it safe, I guess. 1982 film, this is the OG, the only one that matters really, other than the sequels, which are pretty good. I enjoyed them a lot. I'm talking about the only one that matters when it comes to the remake, which was absolute garbage. A lot of people like it, but yeah, it doesn't even hold a candle at all to this one. So, like I said, I watched this for the first time in my 20s, probably my early 20s, and I've always seen clips of it, so I've always kind of known the whole idea of it. Little girl, they're here, and haunted house kind of thing, and the big argument about whether Toby Hooper actually directed this film or was it Steven Spielberg like ghost directing kind of thing. He did produce it, and it certainly feels like a Spielberg film. But a film can feel like a director's film and not be that director's film. Goonies, for instance, is not directed by Steven Spielberg. It's produced by Steven Spielberg as well, and I believe directed by Richard Donner, if I got his name correctly. Regardless, it feels completely like a Steven Spielberg film, even though it's not. And this one can be the same thing. It could be a Toby Hooper film and feel like a Steven Spielberg film. The only thing is it doesn't feel like a Toby Hooper film at all. You watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from '73. You watch Funhouse from 1980. And then you watch this, doesn't feel like a Toby Hooper film at all. So there's that. And it makes you wonder because, like I said, it has the Spielberg isms all over the place, and I can't really see a reason why it would just be Toby Hooper's name on the cover and like on the credits, without some kind of like legal fight or something like that, unless they had like a backroom handshake or something, and Spielberg was like, okay, you're only going to take 88% of the money, and I'm going to take 92% of the money, but you can have your name in the cover, and we'll just pretend it's your movie. And unless something like that happened, but doesn't sound very professional and doesn't sound very believable because, I don't know, would you take 8% of an entire cut to have your name on something and know that it's not actually yours? I don't know. I'll just stick with it's Toby Hooper's film, and we'll just keep things simple as that. So I grew on it. I definitely grew on it because I wasn't like it was just the most basic meh film to me, and there's a lot of elements that took me out of it. The Zelda actress specifically, because in my 20s, I never really knew what they were going for with her character. Was she supposed to be a comedic relief? Were we supposed to take her seriously? The stuff that came out of her mouth was just strange. The way she behaved was strange. I didn't know what kind of, like, what her character was supposed to be. Whether it was supposed to be a goofy character on purpose, or if we were supposed to take her seriously. Like, I just never knew, and it always took me out of the film, and the film just seemed weird to me in like a goofy way. But it could have been too that I went into the film expecting something and got something completely different, and I'm pretty sure that's mostly what happened, because I thought this was going to be like, one of the scariest movies of the 80s kind of thing, and it just ended up being almost screwball kind of, especially in certain elements of it. But that's where your Spielberg mannerisms come in. And without a specific scene in this film, it pretty much is a kid's movie. Like, it's a PG film, hands down, except for one specific scene. And everybody who's seen the movie, I'll get to it in the review, knows what scene I'm talking about. The really gross and violent, like, 30 seconds of the movie. That's totally not appropriate for kids. You cut that out, and this is a PG film that'll still scare the shit out of specifically like young kids, like 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. But other than that, quite a family movie with that scene removed. So the film opens up with the wonderful American national anthem. So we got a lot of patriotism in here, obviously, because as soon as, like, before the credits even come up, you got the most beautiful representation of the American national anthem ever. Very, very good stuff. And then you got the whole like neighborhood setting, white picket fence, kids biking down the neighborhood, like pure Steven Spielberg, right off the get go, and it really brings you into the world of the movie when before shit hits the fan kind of thing. And the lighting effects are really good in this film, and I have to praise them, especially the strobe effects, the obviously the TV lighting. Everything is just perfect and timed perfectly when it comes to the lighting and how it's done, because it adds a very realistic nostalgia but creepiness at the same time to the cinema and the cinematography, and I really really like that. So a big applause to the lighting, even though that sounds really random when it comes to the rest of the film, but the lighting is 10 out of 10, and it's played out very dreamlike, which I like. Next day, we're kind of like getting to know the family. They have a bird named Tweety that died, and obviously the little girl Carol Ann really had a sentimental connection with this bird, so they're trying to get rid of it before she notices, but she notices, so they have to bury it in the backyard, and she's like over the grave praying and everything, and it's pretty cute. And then you have the Robbie is his name? Yeah, Robbie, the boy, and he's your '80s little boy kind of thing. Loves Star Wars, reads comics all the time, always wearing a ball cap. It's a very nostalgic film, and when you watch it, you can definitely feel the nostalgic out of it. And like I said, the neighborhood and the family feels purely '80s and purely nostalgic, which I really like. I love how when they finish burying Tweety too, the little girl's like, "Can I have a goldfish now?" Like she just gets over it like that. The funniest One of the funniest scenes is when the dad is watching a football game with all his friends, and I've never heard of this before. Okay, I'm not that young. Okay, I was born in '89, and this is '82, but I've never heard of a television where the remote control, like the neighbor's remote control, can work with your TV and can have the same signal. I've never heard of that in my life. But they're watching the football game, and the neighbor wants to watch Mr. Rogers, so he switches on his TV to Mr. Rogers, and because the connection is the same, the football game also changes. So the dad goes out and is like, "Hey, we're trying to watch football here," and he's like, "Well, my kids want to watch Mr. Rogers." And then they have an argument back and forth, and both their remotes work for both their televisions, so they can switch channels on either one. Like I said, I've never heard that in my life. Like, did that happen in the '80s? That's insane. I like how and how would that not be annoying? Like, why? How could a cable company not fix that issue? I've never heard of that in my life. It's very very interesting. But it played out for a funny scene because they're arguing about, and you never interrupt a group of guy friends in their football games. I'm not into football myself, but I know that American men definitely love their American football. So try getting away with that and try watching Mr. Rogers during a football game. I can only imagine. I love when the parents are smoking weed in bed, and especially the father. He's just acting. He's the weirdest high I've ever seen. He gets on the bed and he starts to like pretend like back in his college or high school days when he was a diver, and he like is trying to instruct his wife on how he used to dive and his younger days, and then he gets in front of the mirror and he's like sucking in his gut and he's like, before, after, before, after, before, after. He's just, and then he starts like giving like raspberries to his wife, and he starts making like Donald Duck sounds almost. It's really, really fucking weird. Kind of weird, dude. Like, I don't know. Both my parents certainly were never into marijuana ever. So if they were to smoke it behind my back, it would kind of, when I was a kid, I mean, it'd be like the biggest hypocrite and the most shocking thing ever because my parents were like very much against weed. But it's funny to see, a married couple with like 3 kids just, togging some joints in in the bedroom. I'm sure it's pretty common, especially today. Weed being legal in most of the United States and all of Canada. But it's still just it's funny to see. it's an ironic thing to see, kind of thing. And then the kid walks into the bedroom, and the woman's trying to hide it, and it's like, I'm sure that whole room smells of weed. Like, weed is pretty potent when it comes to the smell. But yeah, and then everything goes bonkers at night. I love the way they did the closet scene where the girl's being like sucked into it. I love the clown because clowns are scary enough already for a lot of people, but Robbie throws his jacket over it, I think, or his blanket or something like that, and the blanket has Chewbacca on it, so more nostalgia there. And he's terrified of the clown, and he's always like looking under his bed. But yeah, the way they did the whole like dragging the girl into the closet, like with the windy room and everything, was very very good for 1982. They're here. Classic line, and apparently that line was improvised. I heard that it wasn't in the script, and the little girl just decided to turn around and be creepy and say that, and none of the actors were expecting it, so it was a total surprise on set. And by the way, it's heartbreaking, but rest in peace to that little actress who passed away so young at 12 years old. What a tragic, tragic thing to happen, because at least she left her legacy behind in these films, but way, way, way too young to be going. And I'm sure everybody has heard of like the strange, like behind the scenes stuff and a lot of things that happen to a lot of the cast and crew in this film, including the girl who plays Dana, the 16-year-old girl. That actress also experienced a fatal domestic situation in her lifetime. So very, very weird film. I mean, I own the film and nothing has happened to me so far, but hey, you never know. We all know as well that they, in the final pool scene, use apparently this is like speculated, but they use actual skeletons from actual humans. Now, how they would get people to sign their bodies off, like, I mean, like, how do you do that? Like, hey, we're gonna make a movie. Like, do you go to a bunch of dying people and be like, we're gonna make a movie, so when you croak, you want to put your signature here so we can use your skeleton in a movie? Like, I don't understand how you would be able to legally and morally do that. But I mean, people donate their bodies to all kinds of shit, so I just don't understand how they would plan ahead of time to have a scene like that happen with like actual real bodies and shit. The construction crew that's working on the house is hilarious. I love how they hit on Dana, and she's a high schooler, so I don't know what's going on there. These guys look like they're in their late 30s or 40s, and they're completely hitting on a teen girl. And they're eating the food that the mom is cooking through the window, and they don't even give a shit. A lot of people actually like dine at this family's home without even asking. It's kind of funny. The construction crew does through the window. The window's open, and he's just tasting the tomato sauce and puts the spoon right back in the tomato sauce after he like licks the spoon. The kitchen chair situation was really interesting, and it's said pretty quick that the father Steve is a skeptic, and it's not said that the mother is a skeptic. However, both of them, reasonably enough, start to believe in the hauntings pretty quickly. I mean, when you see a bunch of chairs start to be stacked up in a pattern that doesn't make any sense, and how they're balanced on top of each other in the most strange way in less than 5 seconds, because the chairs are normal. The mom turns around to pick up the little girl, puts her down, and then turns around, and there's the chairs like stacked on the table in the strangest way. It would freak anybody out. But it was interesting how they did it. And then she wants to show her husband, like, look what's happening in this house. And she's like getting all excited and all like frantic and trying to show the husband with the little girl dragging across the floor and everything, and that their house is possessed. And he, like, again, he for being a skeptic, he starts to believe it pretty damn quick, without kind of like questioning it a whole lot. But like I said, who wouldn't in that case? And then you have the whole like hurricane, storm, tornado thing, which really starts to get very Wizard of Oz like. You get like the special effects that start to definitely look aged. But it's funny because that's what gives the movie its charm too. And like I said, I mentioned already, like watching this in my early 20s, I'm like, the fuck is this? This is this is just boring and dumb. But you mature as a film fan, and you start to appreciate these things a lot more. And I liked like the tornado, the way it looked. Like I said, very Wizard of Oz. The room effects, the closet effects were fantastic, and the whole idea, the way they executed the little girl being missing in some realm, and they can hear her voice, and just the fear in everybody, the fear in Dana, the fear in Robbie. I love that scene where he goes up to the TV and he's calling his mother, but he can't get his voice out, and you can see the fear in his face, and he can't scream. It reminds me a lot of times when I have like dreams or something, and I'm trying to wake up, and I'm trying to like yell, and sometimes I wake up and I wonder, like, was I screaming? Was I yelling for like 10 seconds? Because in the dream you try to scream and you can't, and that's what Robbie was portraying. It seemed like he was trying to scream for his mom and dad, but he just couldn't get his voice out. It was very well acted. It was very well acted from that kid. I really liked that. After the storm, they think that the little girl's in the swimming pool for some reason, so the dad goes to dive into this muddy ass swimming pool. How, like, why they thought she would get there, I don't know. Like, the storm blew her into the pool for some reason. But, yeah, and then they discover she's in the realm. The people they call in, Dr. Lesh and her crew, there's no way that this didn't inspire Insidious. There's no way with Elaine. Is her name Elaine? I think it's Elaine. Lynn Shay. And her crew of like loser misfits kind of guys. There's no way that the Dr. Lesh and her crew in this film didn't inspire Elaine and her crew in Insidious. There's no way. It had to have inspired it. And if, yeah, I'm sure they've came out with it already, but I'm just saying their mannerisms and their behavior and the whole situation is so similar that Poltergeist must have inspired James Wan to write that script for Insidious. And the crew is funny. There's two guys, and one of them, I swear, is a Stephen King lookalike. Like in the 80s, I mean, except Stephen King in the 80s and 70s had more of like a chubbier face. This guy has more of the skinnier Stephen King face that Stephen King has today. But same glasses, same haircut, same everything. And you know when people do something that just really grinds your gears and gets on your nerves for no apparent reason? Like, you don't know why this gets on your nerves so much, but it does. It's that Stephen King lookalike going to the kitchen and helping himself to food and putting a chicken leg in his mouth and just keeping it in his mouth. Like, you can't put it on a plate or you can't hold it in your hand. You just have to hold it in your fucking mouth and just walk around the kitchen and stare at shit. Like, it's the most random thing, but it grinds my gears every time I watch this film, and every time I get to the scene, it just fucking drives me nuts. Like, imagine this is a chicken leg. Fucking guy does it for like a minute and a half. Ugh. That scene shouldn't like piss me off so much, but it does. But he has a fucking chicken leg in his mouth. First of all, he's helping himself to food in a house that's not his, and then he walks around the kitchen with a fucking chicken leg in his mouth. And then he sees a steak on the table, and the steak starts like moving and like getting all like pussy and shit. It's really disgusting. And then it gets to my favorite scene in the film, the one that makes this an adult film that I was talking at the beginning of the review. When he's in front of the mirror and his face starts melting. Beautiful practical effects. This is where I can believe that Toby Hooper definitely had control of that scene, say in that scene, all that. And it looks gloriously disgusting when the guy's like peeling off his face and shit. It's horrendous. It's not for kids. It's very, very disgusting. And it's very, very, very well done for horror cinema and practical effects all the way. This is why practical effects will always beat CGI. And the special effects in this film, like I said, very cartoonish, but it definitely is what gives this film its full charm. So I really liked that. Everything about it. Everything about the special effects, even though they look cartoonish and dated as fuck, it's what makes the movie. You know, it's all movies from, 40s, 30s, 50s are dated as fuck, but some of them just hold that charm that'll always age. The angel woman coming down the stairs with like the orbs and everything, that's pure Steven Spielberg. I mean, if he didn't direct this film, he obviously had some like ideas that the rest of the crew and director Toby Hooper and everybody else listened to, kind of thing. And then you get your plot reveal where this neighborhood is basically built on top of like a ancient burial ground where this like corporate guy who's basically built like he buys land and owns land and buys houses on land. Says he's gonna move graves, but he only moves the tombstones. He leaves the bodies where they are, and this is where the whole poltergeist thing came about, and the glorious ending, the horrific ending again with the skeletons in the pool, like I mentioned. And they're everywhere. There's so many of them. If those were real bodies, like this, like the rumor says it is, that's nuts. That's a lot of actual skeletons. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And yeah, there's the Zelda actress who plays Tangina. Again, I already mentioned this. I didn't know what to take from her growing up and the first few times that I watched this, but she's like the best thing about the film. Like, this wouldn't be such a classic if it wasn't for her. She's quirky and everything, and the actress, she's a little person because of a condition, and she has the voice of a child and stuff like that, and that's what really makes the film. She's also in a film. She's probably in a few films, but I also know her from a film called Behind the Mask: The Rise and Fall of Leslie Vernon. It's like a spoof on a slasher, but she's in that movie. She's a little bit older, but it was one of her last roles, and she's like, she holds that same charm that she did from Poltergeist. You recognize her right away if you've seen Poltergeist. It's like, hey, that's Zelda. I forget her last name. I apologize, but Zelda something. And she's great. She makes the movie. Like, she makes, other than the little girl, Carol Ann. It's Tangina all the way that makes this film exactly what it is. I love when the mom is like being dragged all over like the walls and the roof and everything. Total Nightmare on Elm Street vibes with Tina from I think it was Tina from Nightmare on Elm Street. I loved that scene. Totally reminded me of Elm Street right away. Even though Elm Street came out 2 years after this movie. So maybe Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by Poltergeist, probably. The whole like avoid the light, go to the light, avoid the light, go to the light with the little girl. It's like, okay, does she avoid the light? Is the light evil or is the light good? Which one is it? Does she need to go to the light at a certain time? Shit gets confusing with that because Tangina is always like, avoid the light at all costs, and then she's like, go to the light, tell her to go to the light. So it's all back and forth in that scene. I love the dad's confrontation with the business guy. He's like, you just moved the tombstones and you left the bodies where they are, with the storm going on and everything. He's like, ah, and the way he screams, he like makes this like high-pitched female like, ah, like shaking him kind of thing. Clearly I can't do a high-pitched scream, but I try. Yeah, the ending with the skeletons is just classic in its own right and in its own merit. And then I love how they run off to the motel, and the dad just first thing he does is drags the TV outside of the house, or outside of the motel, sorry, and just closes the door. By the way, TVs in the early 80s looked like microwaves. Just saying. There was the screen, and then right beside the screen where you like push the buttons to change the channels and shit, looks like a microwave. Especially in this watch, I was looking at that thing and I'm like, that looks like a damn microwave. If that thing had a door on it, it'd be a microwave. So hilarious. And before the motel scene and the final like storm thing, I liked in the bedroom too what I call the hellhole, because it literally looks like a portal to hell. It's all orange and fiery and shit. That was terrifying. A lot of stuff, like I said, that is kind of like an introduction to horror films when it comes to younger audiences, and a lot of people have said this, so I'm not the only, I'm not creating this. This is not my idea. This is what a ton of people have said. This is a perfect introduction to younger viewers into horror. And like I said, if you cut that melting face scene, it really is a family horror movie, in my opinion. There's nothing really in here, except for the end that gets really spooky and disturbing. There's nothing horrific here. There's no cussing at all, and it's not an intense. Well, intense. It is intense. It's not like an adult film, really. You know what I'm getting at. That's Poltergeist, man. This is a fucking classic. I gave it a 4. It's not, one of my favorite 80s horror films of all time. There's way better. It'd be in my top, I don't know. It'd probably be, I don't know if it'd be in my top 50. Would it be in my top 50? It'd probably be in my top 50, but I don't want to, like, guarantee that it would. But it's worth watching, and it merits its classic appeal for sure. So, nothing bad that I can say about Poltergeist. I love this little digibook, and wouldn't mind having it on 4K if I can get a 4K television and player, but that'll be one day. That's Poltergeist. That's the OG 1982, directed by Toby Hooper, but the arguments will go on forever if it was actually Toby Hooper, if it was Steven Spielberg, whoever. It says Toby Hooper, and as I mentioned, I would think there would be some courtroom shit going on if it wasn't Toby Hooper, so either they had some private agreement or it's fucking Toby Hooper, and we'll just stick with it being Toby Hooper kind of thing. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I will be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.